Welcome into Texans Today. We have a good show on tap for you today, breaking down the latest news and rumors around the Texans and one of our AFC South foes. Before we get going, we have joint practice and our final preseason game up against the Lions this week. And hey, we have a Lions channel here at Chat Sports. My guy, Micro Mike, we have a little friendly sub battle going on right now. So far this week, Texans, we've earned 138 subs here on the channel. Lions, they've gained 179. So if you're brand new to the channel, if you want daily Texans news and rumors content all year long, and you want to help us beat the Lions on and off the field, go down and hit that subscribe button. On today's program, the Indianapolis Colts named a brand new starting quarterback, and I told you so. If you've been watching the show, all I got to say is I told you so. Also, we have some Texans injury updates from this week and some, kind of non-updates from a couple guys. Also, I have notes from practice today there outside of NRG. Before we get going, I talked about this in my show that went out this morning, but Aaron Wilson giving more clarification on some of the Texans roster moves that happened in the past 24 hours. The Texans made Cornell Powell and Juwan Winfrey signings official, both wide receivers that had worked out with the team and now signed with the team. And then they waived injured Xavier Johnson, broken hand per source, and released running back J.J. Taylor. So a couple roster moves to break down. The Texans signed 2 more wide receivers, and people asked me on X, hey, Jeremy, what do you think this means? Does this shake up anything with the wide receiver room? No, I think this means we won't see the starters in that final preseason game, and they needed more bodies because they're not playing Nico Collins, they're not playing Christian Kirk, and they're not playing multiple of those guys. So, thus, they signed a couple wide receivers to add to this team, so they had enough guys to run that preseason game. All right, let's get into the news around the Indianapolis Colts, our AFC South foes. They just named Daniel Jones their starting quarterback QB1. Anthony Richardson, who they drafted high up in the first round, he's dealing with an injured shoulder, has been dealing it with that all off season. And, he's had his chances here and there to be the Colts starting quarterback, and he's still young, I'll give him that. But Shane Steichen, the Colts head coach, kind of put it all out there today, saying Daniel Jones is our starter, not for right now. He basically proclaimed, we don't want him on a tight leash. He's our starter for the season. They already named Daniel Jones their guy for the next 17 regular season games. And if you're following Daniel Jones, if you knew Daniel Jones with the New York Giants, it's not very inspiring news. I saw a lot of Colts fans on Twitter kind of spiraling out. This is our Colts. This is our team. Looks like they're bleeding blue this season for Indy for the shoe. Very sad. Very sad. And another guy, I believe, works for The Athletic, James Boyd, who covers the Indianapolis Colts, was asking Shane Steichen questions at the presser, and this is what he had to say on X. I asked Shane Steichen why he believes the Colts can win with Daniel Jones when he went 24, 44, and 1 as a starter and 13-3 3 and 13 over the last 2 seasons. Well, I think that he's proven that he's a good that he's played good football in that 2022 season, the playoff berth. He had a hell of a year that year. If we're looking at guys from 2022, yikes. If the Texans came out and said, you know what? I think we have a top 5 running back in Nick Chubb. Look what he did in 2021. Are we serious? This is the NFL. This is the not for long. It's a what have you done for me lately league. And the Colts head coach is talking about 2022? I mean, your heart has to almost go out for these Colts fans at this point because this is just sad, embarrassing. Add whatever synonym you want into that sentence. I'm glad I'm a Houston Texans fan. Obviously, we had some dark days there between Deshaun Watson and C.J. Stroud, but yeah, not looking good for Colts fans. Get ready to get those mocks lined up for the end of this season. But I want to hear from you folks at home. Rank the AFC South for me. In terms of which teams you're most worried about, which teams you think will be the best up against the Houston Texans this year. The Jags, the Titans, and the Colts. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's video. So if you get hit with the YouTube ad break here, all good. Scroll on down and give me your official ranking for all the other teams in the AFC South. Obviously, no surprise here. I have the Colts dead last. I think they could vie for a top 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. But this will surprise people unless you've been subscribed and watching the channel for the past couple months. I will continue to say I think our biggest competition in the AFC South, the Texans' biggest competition, will be the Tennessee Titans. We've seen how multiple teams have had that one-year transformation. We saw it with C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans. They went from having the number 2 pick to being in the playoffs the next year. We saw it with Jaden Daniels, number 2 pick with the Washington Commanders. They made it to the NFC Championship game last year. So I was really high on Cam Ward. I thought he was a good quarterback, the best quarterback prospect from this past year's class. And I know that's not saying much because the other quarterbacks have not impressed that much unless you're a Shedeur Sanders truther. But I think the Titans will be the team that kind of pushes the Texans a little bit in that week 12 to week 15 stretch where we're all looking at the in the hunt graphic. I think the Titans will be that team that kind of pushes the Texans. I think the Texans are going to three-peat, obviously, as AFC South champs. But nonetheless, I think the Titans will be a little bit better than the Jags this season. Now, coming up, I have injury updates and updates from practice. But first, got to show some love to our friends over at Prize Picks, the sponsor of today's show. We love us some Prize Picks here at Texans Today, and I know you will too because they are the #1 daily fantasy sports app in America for good reason. Once again, this episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Preseason football is underway and college football is here, so don't miss any of the action this season on Prize Picks. Get started today with the #1 daily fantasy sports app out there, where all you got to do is pick 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks, it's the most easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. And if you're looking at, Jeremy, obviously week 1, a couple weeks away, here are my season-long projections. I actually made these projections months ago. Now, it might change for you. Obviously, if you look now, some of the projections might be a little bit different. But still, nonetheless, you can do an NFL season-long projection lineup just like I did. I have more on the passing yards for C.J. Stroud, more on the rush yards from Joe Mixon, where with the injury report for Joe Mixon, this one might be looking a little tricky for me. Nico Collins, I have him more on the receiving yards. And just because I'm a hater, obviously, I have less on the passing touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence. You can use my picks or you can go against them. Also, we have a max discount alert. Woo, woo, woo. Week 1, Dak Prescott. All he has to do is throw 1 passing yard. 1 passing yard. Max discount here. All he has to do is throw 1 passing yard, and that is a win in whatever lineup you want to set. So get started today with our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks, they're not only the best daily fantasy sports app out there, they also put their members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. Prize Picks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. So go download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Get started today with our friends at Prize Picks. Run your game. All right, let's go to some of the injury updates here for the Houston Texans. First up, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. He's getting some work on the sideline. Very encouraging. A lot of the reports were saying he could be ready to go week 1 when the Texans face the L.A. Rams. Maybe he will be. I've been one to say, unless he's like 90% good, I would rather C.J. Gardner-Johnson maybe sit out a week or 2, maybe even put him on that short-term IR, miss the first 4 weeks of the season, make sure he's good to go for the rest of the year. But it is very encouraging that we're seeing C.J. GJ on the sidelines getting that work in. Also, some more injury updates, this time from Sam Warren from the Houston Chronicle. He says Texans Jalen Reed, Trent Brown, Elijah Huzzie are over here observing practice, but don't look like they are getting any side work today. So those guys, they're at practice, but not working out on the sidelines. We knew Jalen Reed, it was going to be about a 3-week recovery time for him, so I don't expect him to be ready week 1. Trent Brown, I don't know what the deal is with Trent Brown and when he's actually going to return to practice, because he was cleared by doctors to go ahead and start, physically getting ready for practice and ramping up. It's been a very slow process, but we all know the Texans, they are very cautious with their injuries and how they kind of bring guys back. And then Elijah Huzzie, he's a UDFA out of North Carolina. Would have been drafted if he didn't get hurt in that East-West Shrine Bowl, but I believe he's a kind of stash player that the Texans put on their practice squad this year. Some more injury watches to keep your eyes out on. I talked about it earlier. Joe Mixon starting to get where the rubber meets the road here, and I'm still holding out hope. Like I said, if you look back to last year, Joe Mixon did not practice all throughout training camp, any of the preseason games, until I want to say the final week leading up to that Colts Week 1 game last season. He could do the same this year when the Texans face the Rams. And then DeMeco Ryans, same thing. He's been dealing with the knee issue. And reports are kind of mixed around Autry, whether or not he'll be ready to go Week 1. So we'll have to see and keep our eyes out for these two guys as it gets closer and closer to Week 1. All right, let's go to the practice notes for today, August 19th. CJ Stroud was in fuego to start. 4 for 4 in his first drills and was absolutely dropping dimes. Multiple reporters there at practice were lauding over his throw to Justin Watson over the middle, said he placed it perfectly in the breadbasket, and that's what you want to see from CJ Stroud. What makes him elite and what can make him elite is his accuracy. CJ Stroud is known for his down-the-field accuracy, being able to put the ball in between the numbers, and that's exactly what Stroud did to start practice today. He was looking really good. Also, Ersery looks like he's still starting at left tackle for now. He was the guy whenever they first went out there. He was still the left tackle with the first offensive line unit. Now they did kind of move in Cam Robinson here and there at left tackle, and Ersery, I think he had a good practice, but towards the end got beat a couple times. But I still go back to this tweet from my guy Houston Stressens, another great follow on Texans Twitter, where he kind of showed Aireontae Ersery talking at a little bit of a press conference, talking with reporters. And this is what Ersery had to say on whether he's comfortable playing left or right tackle. He said, I'm comfortable at tackle, either tackle. Wherever they put me at, wherever they want me, that's where I'm going. And then he said what he's done. They'd asked him, how you've done great at left tackle. Tell us about how you've done. He said, I really haven't done anything yet. And goosebumps. Absolute goosebumps that we finally have an offensive lineman that seems like he's tough as nails. He's got that grit. He's got that, swarm mentality. And I think the Texans, they might have found that guy right there in round 2 with Aireontae Ersery. I still think, and I tweeted it out today, starting lineup Week 1, Ersery left tackle, Tomlinson, Jake Andrews, Ed Ingram, Titus Howard. I think that's the best 5 the Texans have right now, the most cohesive 5 the Texans have right now, and I wouldn't mind if that's the starting lineup that they trot out there in Week 1. And speaking of the offense, maybe one of their better practices during training camp. The offense was looking really good today. Towards the end of practice, the defense kind of got their get back a little bit, but it looks like they're finally starting to get on the same page. They're finally starting to work it out a little bit, getting this Nick Caley offense kind of implemented here in Houston, and it seems like some of the pieces are starting to come together at the perfect time. And one guy who it seems like has been really showing out, especially after the Texans went ahead and traded one of his buddies in John Mechie, is Xavier Hutchinson. A lot of people are saying he might be surprisingly up in the depth chart for this Houston Texans team. This from DJ Bieniemy of ESPN covering the Houston Texans. He said, one thing that's clear is Xavier Hutchinson is going to play a lot. He just made a diving catch with Stingley in coverage. And from the reports that I've seen and the people that I've talked to, it's Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. They're the clear 1 and 2. And then it's a little bit of a tier break. And then it's Xavier Hutchinson and the 2 rookies. Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel, the Cyclone Trio, as you may say, the 3 guys from Iowa State. So I think the Texans are in a good spot where you have a good influx of a couple guys who are there to prove themselves, a la Xavier Hutchinson, and then you have a couple rookies who are kind of working their way in and who have a lot of promise in Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Then past those 3, then you have Braxton Berrios and Justin Watson, who are at the back end, but still chance to make the roster. Let's still talk about the defensive side, where they might be experimenting more in the secondary. I talked about this morning Miles Bryant playing more at safety than at the nickel spot. Another kind of piece that's moving around a little bit could be Kamari Lassiter. This coming from Jonathan Alexander. The Texans have experimented some with Kamari Lassiter at nickel when they've gone to their dime packages. So maybe they move Kamari Lassiter around a little bit. I still think it's the best lineup is with him and Stingley on the outside. But maybe with the progression of Jalen Smith, the rookie out of USC, they say, hey, maybe at some points we can kick him outside, put Kamari Lassiter inside. They love versatility on this Texans defense. They like guys who can play multiple positions. I've actually heard from a couple people that Darrell Taylor, the defensive end they signed this offseason, he could maybe find his way to play some like stand-up outside linebacker edge, maybe drop into coverage here and there to confuse the offense. I'm okay with this, and it shows you that DeMeco Ryans is still adjusting, learning, and moving pieces around on both sides of the football. And speaking of the defensive line, speaking of Darrell Taylor, the D-line looks like it's taking shape. As I mentioned, Ersery looked good at the start of practice and then got beat a couple times at the end of practice, one time by Derek Barnett, who looks like he's getting back into form. Got activated last week and now looks really good. He beat Ersery on a rep, and I'm really excited to see this defensive line go to work. They absolutely got after the Panthers in that Week 2 preseason matchup at all levels. First string, second string, third string. Every single defensive line unit that they put out there was wreaking havoc. Derek Barnett, I think whenever Will Anderson Jr., Danielle Hunter, they need, a rep off. Obviously, he's not as good as those guys, but it's not a massive drop-off. You still have really good edge rushers waiting in the wings if those guys need to take a break or need to step off. Also, another guy on the defensive line that is getting some good work in and is looking good getting ready for the start of Week 1 is Foley Fatukasi. He's somebody who I was really happy the team re-signed. He's not somebody that is going to light up the stat book, right? 2024, he had 24 tackles, 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss. But he's a big, stout human being. He's somebody who really mans that nose tackle position straight up against the center, and he's going to be able to eat blocks. He's going to be able to cause some havoc on the interior, make runs, bounce out to the outside where Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter are waiting right there for him. So Foley Fatukasi looking good in practice so far as well. And then just one more note, a note at the very end of practice when Nick Caley was talking to the media. He decided after, calling plays on the sidelines, doing some stuff in the booth, that he will plan to call the game from the field. He will be on the sidelines for the Texans this season. There's the debate throughout the NFL. Should your OC be up in the booth so he can see more? Or should he be on the sidelines so he can communicate better with the guys on the offense, most namely the quarterback? And I think because Nick Caley is that point of contact, he is that guy for C.J. Stroud in this offense, it's probably a little bit better that he is there on the sidelines. And, the Texans still have a lot of guys who they trust on this offensive coaching unit who can be up in the booth, most namely Ben McDaniels, who's been the wide receiver coach, been doing a great job. I think him maybe being up in the booth, Nick Caley being on the sideline, and they can kind of communicate there. That'll be a good mix for this offensive coaching staff. That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, you could do so at Jeremy Chuggs. And one more time, if you made it to the end of today's video, obviously we're doing something correct. So go down and hit that subscribe button. Help us beat our Lions channel. I don't want to lose to Micro Mike. So go down there and hit that subscribe button for free Texans content all year long.